published, 1751 EDT, the 23rd of April 2018, updated, 2151 EDT, the 23rd of April 2018. France's President Emmanuel Macron greeted President Donald Trump with a French peck on the cheek Monday as the U.S. leader welcomed him to the White House. He and his wife Brigitte were greeted by the Trumps outside the West Wing to start the first state visit of the presidency, which will feature a lavish state dinner planned by First Lady Melania Trump on Tuesday. Presidents Trump and Macron had competed with power handshakes at previous meetings, but this time it was the visitor who disarmed his U.S. counterpart with a traditional Gallic greeting. Melania Trump, who briefly lived in Paris, seemed more comfortable and also embraced her French counterpart Brigitte Macron. Minutes later, the two couples appeared on the South Lawn to ceremoniously throw dirt on the site where a tree the Macrons gifted the U.S. had been planted. President Macron appeared to one-up his host by throwing the final shovelful of dirt on the sapling. The women, dressed in formal wear, did not toss dirt on the plant, but Mrs. Macron inspected and grabbed onto Trump's shovel before they departed. Both presidents and their wives are dining now at Mount Vernon, a short helicopter ride away from Washington. The warm reception for the Macrons at the White House came after a red carpet greeting for the French first couple at Joint Base Andrews, and an impromptu walkabout in the spring sunshine that took the Macrons to the Lincoln Memorial. Very French greeting. Emmanuel Macron leaned in to kiss Donald Trump on the left cheek as the U.S. President greeted him at the White House. French First Lady Brigitte Macron, right, leans in and grabs President Trump's shovel as he plants a sapling that was a gift from the French family. Greeting. Emmanuel Macron kept his arm on Trump's elbow as he greeted Melania Trump with another kiss. Thumbs up. Macron channeled the president as he posed on the steps of the White House with his wife Brigitte, the president and the First Lady. President Trump, left. French First Lady Brigitte Macron, center left. French President Emmanuel Macron, center right, and First Lady Melania Trump, right. Pose for reporters in South Lawn en route to Monday's tree planting. First Lady Melania Trump, left. President Donald Trump, center left. French First Lady Brigitte Macron, center right, and French President Emmanuel Macron, right, walk across the South Lawn for a tree planting. Late Monday afternoon, the French and American First Ladies march across the South Lawn wearing stiletto heels. President Donald Trump, left, and French President Emmanuel Macron, right, shovel dirt on top of the sapling that the Macrons gifted the American on Monday, while First Lady Melania Trump, center, looks on President Donald Trump. From left, French First Lady Brigitte Macron, First Lady Melania Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron wave at reporters as they plant a tree at the White House on Monday. Guests at the White House Monday watch Presidents Trump and Macron and their wives board Marine One for a helicopter ride to Washington's Mount Vernon. French First Lady Brigitte Macron, center, leans in to grasp President Trump's left shovel on the South Lawn Monday as First Lady Melania Trump, center right, and French President Emmanuel Macron, right, look on President Trump, center left, waves to reporters as he and First Lady Melania Trump, left. French President Emmanuel Macron, center right, and French First Lady Brigitte Macron, right, arrive Monday evening at Mount Vernon. First Lady Melania Trump, from left, President Trump, French President Emmanuel Macron. French First Lady Brigitte Macron pose for cameras at Mount Vernon. The French first couple arrived at Andrews midday Monday to the playing of both the French national anthem and then the American one. This is a great honor and I think a very important state visit given the moment of our current environment, Macron said as he briefly spoke to reporters outside the plane, first conversing with the crowd in English and then in French. The couple then took a motorcade into Washington, D.C., and were spotted walking around downtown, just blocks from the White House. Before our first work meetings, let's have a walk on Washington's streets, the French president tweeted. The Macrons then walked south and were seen taking in the Lincoln Memorial. They showed up several hours later at the White House with Brigitte having refreshed her bright, Barbie pink jacket with a yellow ensemble. First Lady Melania Trump wore a black cape. The couples briefly met in the Oval Office and then walked into the South Lawn to plant a tree, a gift from the Macrons. The sapling, a European sessile oak, comes from the Belleau Woods, which is where more than 9,000 American Marines died in a World War I battle in France 100 years ago this June. The forest is a memorial site and important symbol of the sacrifice the United States made to ensure peace and stability in Europe, the First Lady's office said. With the small tree already in the ground, Presidents Trump and Macron took turn pouring dirt over the tree's roots. France is a very special country, President Trump said. It's a great honor. The two couples then walked to the awaiting Marine One to be whisked off to dinner at former U.S. President George Washington's estate, located just down the Potomac River in Virginia from Washington, D.C. Tonight's dinner, which includes a trip to see Washington's tomb, will be followed by a special ceremony on the South Lawn Tuesday, and kick off formal talks between the French and American president. The two leaders have formed an unlikely friendship, with Trump bonding with his fellow political novice, despite major ideological differences. French President Emmanuel Macron, right, holds hands with his wife Brigitte, left, as the French and American national anthems play at the arrival ceremony at Joint Base Andrews. The couple arrived just after 1:30 p.m. at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where they received a red carpet welcome to America. The French president and his wife received a bouquet each of purple flowers, tied with red, white and blue ribbon Monday afternoon. Brigitte Macron, left, and President Emmanuel Macron, right, took a walk to the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. The first couple of France kicked off their three-day trip to Washington by looking at some of the sights, including the Lincoln Memorial on the National Mall. The First Lady of France Brigitte Macron, right, greets a member of the public at the Lincoln Memorial, as she and French President Emmanuel Macron to Washington Monday afternoon. The French first couple decided to take a walk around Washington upon their arrival for a three-day trip to the United States. Tonight they'll go to dinner at Mount Vernon with President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump. Mrs. Macron and other officials watch as the French president delivers remarks after landing in Washington. The Macrons listen to the French and American national anthems play at the arrival ceremony at Joint Base Andrews. French President Emmanuel Macron speaks during Monday's welcoming ceremony at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte Macron listen to the U.S. national anthem at Joint Base Andrews as they arrive in the United States for President Trump's first state dinner. French President Emmanuel Macron and his wife Brigitte are photographed getting off their plane Monday at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Brigitte Macron wore a pink coat for the arrival in Washington, where it was 66 degrees on Monday afternoon. Brigitte Macron arrives in the U.S. wearing sky-high black high heels and a Barbie pink coat. The first couple of France will attend a dinner at Mount Vernon with the Trumps tonight. French President Emmanuel Macron, third from left, and his wife Brigitte Macron, right, board their limousine as they arrive in the United States Monday for the Trump administration's first state dinner. Roll out the red carpet. Members of the military prepare for Macron to land just outside of Washington. Donald and Melania Trump will entertain their French counterparts at a special dinner this evening at the estate that belonged to America's first president, George Washington. Tonight the couples will dine at Mount Vernon after a helicopter ride over Washington to Virginia. The Trumps will receive the Macrons at the North Portico, in a low-key welcome to the White House for the leader who has developed an unlikely friendship with Trump, a fellow political novice. Their approaches to international issues like the climate and tariffs are pronounced. They don't see eye to eye on taming Iran, either, or the long-term role of the U.S. in Syria. The two presidents have formed a partnership to confront brutal dictators and terrorist groups, though, as reflected in their recent assault on Bashar al-Assad after he violated human rights norms with his use of chemical weapons. Their buddy act is drawing comparisons to the special relationship the U.S. has traditionally had with Great Britain, which joined in the strikes fewer than 2 weeks ago. Assad's chemical weapons facilities in Syria. President Trump has not visited Britain's Theresa May in London, putting off or outright cancelling expected trips. A new one is on the books for this summer, officials on both sides of the alliance said last week, but a date has not been locked in. The President and First Lady meanwhile spent 2 days in Paris last July and were the Macron's guests of honour at the annual Bastille Day parade that celebrates France's independence. In the City of Lights, Macron welcomed Trump with a military band as Les Invalides, a military museum and monument, and took him to a 5-star dinner inside the Eiffel Tower. They ended the visit, during which Trump told Macron's 64-year-old wife, "You are in such good shape," with an effusive display of hugging, hand-yanking and backslapping. Their long goodbye was reminiscent of an earlier handshake, at their first face-to-face in Brussels in May, that was the very definition of a grip and grin. Recalling the handshake in an interview with Fox News that aired on the network Sunday, Macron said it was actually a very friendly moment. Seeing Prime Minister Abe and some of the different victims, I resisted, he admitted. But in fact, it was a very natural moment, I have to say. And a very friendly moment. Don't worry. He said that he and Trump had developed a strong personal relation based on their interactions, including the trip to Paris for Bastille Day. We have a very special relationship because both of us are probably the maverick of the systems on both sides. I think President Trump's election was unexpected in your country and probably my election was unexpected in my country, and we are not part of the classical political system, he said. Macron also told Fox, "I think we are very much in line on some very critical issues of this world, and especially counter-terrorism and fight against ISIS." A senior U.S. official said Friday that this week's festivities in Washington are something of a celebration of the relationship. I think it's indicative of a desire to continue to forge a close relationship, a stronger relationship, a relationship that's already very strong, I think. Among the strongest that we have of any allies and partners in the world, the official said. However, the senior Trump administration official also predicted that there would be a full and free airing of points of view on global issues during their talks this week, many of which we feel are pretty closely aligned France, and then a few which may not be as tightly aligned. But more than anything, I think what the president would like to hear from President Macron is his counsel and his point of view and his perspective, the official said. The Iran nuclear deal that the Obama administration spearheaded with France, the UK, China, Germany and Russia was a sticking point heading into the negotiations. Trump says he'll end U.S. participation in the agreement unless Europe agrees to toughen it up. He faces a May 12 deadline to make a final decision. Macron emphasized in his interview with Fox that the agreement is not perfect, but he asked, "What do you have as a better option?" "I don't see it." So that's a question we will discuss, but that's why I just want to say, on nuclear, let's present this framework because it's better than the sort of North Korean type of situation, he said. "I'm not satisfied with the situation with Iran. I want to fight against ballistic missiles, I want to contain their influence in the region." White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders rebuffed Macron on Monday, telling American reporters, "We certainly think that there should be a better deal, one that actually is positive, that works. And we don't really typically look to the leadership in Iran to determine what our foreign policy is." Macron and Trump also have conflicting opinions about a continued U.S. presence in Syria. Before Assad's chemical weapons attack, Trump declared, "We'll be coming out of Syria like very soon. Let the other people take care of it now." He was slow walking a troop withdrawal as of this month, and Macron gave himself credit. 10 days ago, President Trump said the USA's will is to disengage from Syria. "We convinced him that it was necessary to stay," he boasted. In the interview with Fox, the French president clarified that he was referring broadly to U.S. involvement in the war-torn country. "We will have to build a new Syria after war. And that's why I think the U.S. role is very important to play," he said. "The day we will have finished this war against ISIS, if we leave, definitely and totally, even from a political point of view, we will leave the floor to the Iranian regime, Bashar al-Assad and these guys." and they will prepare the new war. They will fuel the new terrorists. Trade was another critical topic heading into this week's meetings between French and American officials. Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminium will go into effect on May 1st, unless the US comes to an agreement of some sort with the European Union. Macron suggested in the Sunday special on Fox that Trump could ultimately back down, telling host Chris Wallace, "He says exemptions till May 1st. Let's see what he will decide on May 1st. I just say, where are your priorities? You don't make trade war with your allies," he said. A U.S. official told reporters on Friday that it's hard to say whether there would be a trade announcement at the end of the talks in Washington. The fact that U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer wasn't listed as a participant in Tuesday's expanded bilateral strongly suggested that the Trump administration wouldn't even put the issue on the table. As for the situation in Syria, the official said, "I think you'll appreciate that the answer to that complicated question is not completely dependent upon what President Macron says in this meeting. I'm confident they will discuss potential French contributions in the campaign, and then we'll see where it goes from there." Sanders declined to comment on the agenda of tomorrow's meetings at her daily press briefing on Monday, saying she did not want to preempt the leaders' conversation. She dealt a blow to Macron as a reporter asked her whether Trump would keep an open mind on trade, tariffs, Iran and even the Paris Climate Agreement that he said the U.S. would exit last year as soon as the option becomes available. "I feel very confident that we have the best negotiator at the table," Sanders responded. Trump's spokeswoman was immediately confronted about the superior tone she seemed to take. "Let me finish. That's not what I said. I said that we have a great negotiator at the table," she rebutted. "I certainly was not commenting on President Macron's abilities, simply stating the obvious, that we have an incredibly good negotiator at the table for the United States." Sanders said the second time around that the two leaders clearly have a great deal of respect for one another and a great friendship. But being able to have very open and candid conversations because of the relationship, not only that the leaders have built, but that has existed between the two countries long before either of these individuals arrived on the scene, and we're going to continue that relationship, she added. "But I think we can expect this to be a very productive and very positive state visit for both countries." The First Lady's office has been overseeing the state dinner that comes much later in Trump's tenure than his predecessors. The Clinton China rests on a table as First Lady Laura Bush gives the press a preview of the dining room for the state dinner in honor of Japanese Prime Minister Junichiro Koizumi's visit to the White House in 2006. First Lady Melania Trump has also selected the Clinton China for her event. First Lady Melania Trump says she spent Sunday making sure the White House was in tip-top shape for the Macrons' arrival. The President and First Lady meanwhile spent 2 days in Paris last July and were the Macrons' guests of honor at the annual Bastille Day parade that celebrates France's independence. Trump and Macron are seen at Élysée Palace in July. France's President Emmanuel Macron, and U.S. President Donald Trump shake hands before a meeting at the Palace Hotel during the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly on September 18, 2017. In New York, the Macrons are not arriving to the White House empty-handed. They're bringing a sapling European sessile oak, the First Lady's office says, that is approximately 4.5 feet tall and between 5 to 10 years old. Alongside the Trumps, they will plant the tree that comes from Belleau Woods, a landmark tied to the United States' entry into World War, before their dinnertime departure to Mount Vernon. Tomorrow morning the White House says that 500 members of the military from 5 branches will be on the South Lawn for a review of the troops when the Macrons arrive. Cabinet secretaries, members of Congress and military families will be present, in addition to students from Maya Angelou French Immersion School of Temple Hills, Maryland. Presidents Macron and Trump will hold bilateral talks on Tuesday morning and appear side by side at a joint news conference after. A state dinner is to follow that Politico says will have 150 guests. Democrats and members of the media are getting the short shrift this year. Neither were invited to the meal that's taking place in the White House's state dining room, aside from Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards. A scaled-down affair. Trump's first state dinner will not take place under the cover of tents set up on the South Lawn that were a hallmark of Barack Obama's dinners. The parade of celebrities who came to those formal affairs is expected to be all but non-existent. A guest list has not been released yet for Tuesday's dinner. House Speaker Paul Ryan's office confirmed to DailyMail.com that he would be in attendance. Christine Lagarde, head of the International Monetary Fund, and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis are also planning to attend, Fox News reported. The Washington National Opera will provide the evening's entertainment. The First Lady's office has been overseeing the state dinner that comes much later in Trump's tenure than his predecessors. Barack Obama and George W. Bush held state dinners in November and September, respectively, the first year of their presidencies. France is getting its turn earlier under Trump than it did under either previous American president, with the last two coming in 2007 and 2014. First Lady Melania Trump highlighted the work her office has done to make her husband's first state dinner a reality in a morning tweet that said, "After months of preparations, POTUS and I are looking forward to hosting our first state dinner with France. Thank you to everyone who has worked so hard to make this visit a success." The First Lady's office said Monday that the menu for Tuesday's dinner would consist of goat cheese gâteau, tomato jam, buttermilk biscuit crumbles, young variegated lettuces, rack of spring lamb, burnt cipollini soubise, Carolina gold rice jambalaya, nectarine tart, and creme fraiche ice cream. Tomorrow's meal is being prepared by White House executive chef Christetta Murford. China from both the Bill Clinton and George H.W. Bush administrations will be used during the upscale meal. The Trumps and Macrons review the troops during last summer's Bastille Day parade. They ended the visit, during which Trump told Macron's 64-year-old wife, "You are in such good shape," with an effusive display of hugging, hand-yanking and backslapping in the City of Lights. Macron welcomed Trump with a military band as Lane Valley Day, a military museum and monument, pictured, and took him to a five-star dinner inside the Eiffel Tower, a state dining room meal in 2007. Fox notes that George W. Bush's administration served French President Nicolas Sarkozy and more than 100 other guests lobster bisque, lamb with tomato fondue, green beans and sweet potato casserole, salad and dessert. Louisiana politicians were among the invited guests that evening, as well as Major League Baseball pitcher Tom Glavine, Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer and French chef Guy Savoy. An East Room performance of actors playing Washington and Frenchman Marquis de Lafayette, whom the square in front of the White House is named after, followed the dinner. Sarkozy took a tour of Mount Vernon on his own the next day. Macron will address a joint session of Congress on Wednesday before departing Washington in rare speech that's extended to only a few visiting leaders. Macron told Fox in the special that was taped in Élysée Palace and aired on Sunday, "I'm very honored to come to your country at the invitation of President Trump and have the opportunity to discuss with him and go into the Congress for this address. My objective is to highlight a long-term history between our two countries, based on values," he said, "and I think the US today has a very strong role to play for peace in different regions of the world and especially Middle East. The US is one of the last best hopes for bringing peace to troubled regions," he said. So, "I will advocate for multilateralism in front of the Congress for that, which means playing all together in order to reduce the influence and support of some rogue states and very tough dictators, and obviously fight against the terrorism together."